The sun hung low over the endless stretch of the New Mexico desert, its last fiery light spilling across the horizon like molten copper, casting long shadows of the mesas and painting the land with both beauty and loneliness. And into that vast emptiness rode a cowboy known only by some as Daniel McGraw, a man hardened by loss and softened by a heart that refused to grow cold no matter how much the world had tried to break him. His boots were cracked, his hat weather-beaten, and the jingle of the few coins left in his pocket was the bitter reminder of how close he was to ruin. But he still rode tall, because men like him did not let poverty define the worth of their soul. And that day, fate led him to a dusty border town where whiskey flowed stronger than justice, where traders and drifters mingled, and where cruelty was a common currency. As Daniel tied his horse outside the crooked saloon, he heard the sharp cry of an auctioneer's voice, calling men to gather at the small wooden platform in the square, and curiosity, or perhaps destiny, drew him closer, for what he saw there would change everything, not just for himself, but for a woman whose life had been stripped down to chains and fear, an Apache woman, young but weary-eyed, her wrists bound, her dark hair tangled from struggle, and yet in her stance there was still a trace of dignity, a trace of defiance. Though she stood before men who laughed and threw their bids like knives at her spirit, she had been dragged there by bounty traders who saw her as nothing more than property, a commodity in a world that thrived on oppression, and the auctioneer shouted numbers that reduced her existence to the price of a mule, and men with cold eyes raised their hands, eager to claim her. But Daniel, standing at the edge of the crowd, felt something stir in him, something beyond anger, beyond pity. It was the raw conviction that no soul deserved to be caged. No woman deserved to be treated as a prize in a cruel game. And though he had nothing left in this world but 3 crumpled silver dollars, he knew in that instant they had found their true purpose. For freedom was worth more than comfort, and sometimes a man had to gamble everything on doing what was right. The crowd jeered when Daniel stepped forward, his drawl calm but firm as he offered his bid, his voice carrying not arrogance but an unshakable weight. And the auctioneer laughed, mocking him for daring to buy anything with so little coin. But silence fell when Daniel tossed his $3 into the dust, declaring that though he had nothing else, he would pay all he had for her freedom. And the crowd, confused and entertained by what they thought was madness, allowed the sale to end, because in their eyes, what could one broke cowboy do with a woman he had no means to keep? But as the chains were struck off her wrists and she stumbled forward, Daniel caught her before she could fall, steadying her not with dominance but with the quiet respect of a man who understood the sacredness of choice. And he whispered, low enough that only she could hear, that she was not his property, not his possession, but free to walk away if she wished. Yet her tired eyes, filled with disbelief and suspicion, searched his face for trickery, for hidden cruelty, and found instead only truth. And though her voice was hoarse, she asked why he had done it, why he would spend the last of his money on a stranger. And Daniel, with that same simple honesty that had guided his life, told her that no man owns the sky, no man owns the land, and no man should own another human being. She did not answer, but her silence was not rejection. It was the sound of a soul processing the impossible gift of freedom. And as they walked away from the town together, past the mocking laughter and muttered curses of the men who had lost their prize, Daniel felt the weight of a new journey pressing upon him. For he had not just spent $3 to set her free, he had spent them to set himself upon a path he could never turn from, one that would demand courage, sacrifice, and perhaps blood. The night grew cold as they reached the edge of the desert, and he gave her his coat, watching her carefully, not asking for thanks, not demanding trust, just offering what little comfort he could. And in the quiet crackle of the campfire, she finally spoke her name, a name like music in the stillness, Ahyoka, which in her tongue meant she brought happiness, though her life had known little of it. And Daniel, hearing the strength hidden in that name, swore silently that he would see her carry it again without fear. Yet shadows lurked in the distance, For those who had lost their prophet were not men to forget, and the bounty traders, humiliated by the cowboy's defiance, swore they would track him down, reclaim what they believed was theirs, and make him pay for shaming them. And so the night closed in, heavy with both danger and promise. As Daniel and Ioka sat by the fire, two souls bound not by chains but by an unspoken destiny that had only just begun. And dear viewer, if this story of courage, sacrifice, and the fire of freedom stirs something in your heart, make sure you subscribe to this channel, because more tales of love, justice and redemption await. Stories that prove that even when the world is cruel, one act of courage can change everything.